Hello, recappers. Ellis here, daring you to not be an LSU Tigers fan after this conversation. Know what NASA Rocket Factory digital twins, Broadway, the largest National Science Foundation grant ever, Heisman Trophy winner and NFL quarterback Jaden Daniels, video games, kids' movies, and trailblazing agriculture companies all have in common? They've been the focus of the mastery of Jason Jamerson and LSU's XR Studio, of which he is director. A 20-year veteran of the entertainment industry, Jason is also director of virtual production at LSU, thriving at the intersection of technology, science, art, and entertainment. Jason exemplifies why education, even if it's outside a classroom or lecture hall, matters, and how technology can do things we almost wouldn't even consider, often with simple consumer-grade things we wouldn't even consider. The fact that he's infectiously inspiring is icing on the cake. So please enjoy the brilliant, passionate Jason Jamerson of Louisiana State University. Oh, one tiny thing. In a few seconds, no, you're not hallucinating. This paint is brand new. The interview paint was old. Here's Jason. Jason Jamerson, welcome, sir, to the Recap Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
There is a wealth that I am ecstatic to recap, but I'd like to start with your digital twin collaboration with the agriculture company Syngenta and the fuel initiative, that's future use of energy in Louisiana. Together, you optimized how digital twins are created for chemical processing facilities, presumably with massive implications in the energy space, among others. It is such an extensive and diverse collaboration. What is its origin story? How did it begin?
Well, we started doing digital twins about 4 years ago when NASA came to LSU looking for a digital twin. John Vickers, who, along with Michael Greaves, together coined the term digital twins. John Vickers works at NASA as the head of advanced materials, I believe is his official title. They coined the term digital twins, but they've been making the case for digital twins in advanced manufacturing for years. And most people don't know that where the SLS rocket is assembled is in New Orleans at the Michoud assembly facility, which is almost a 2 million square foot factory, one of the largest under one roof in the world. And all the parts and pieces come together there. Some are manufactured, but the whole rocket is assembled there and then shipped off on a barge to go to Florida. And so John Vickers in particular wanted a full digital twin of Michoud. And so our first digital twin project was 2 million square feet, which was totally insane. An amazing story in and of itself. But long story short, I'm sure we'll dig back into it.
Oh, I've got about a whole section and a half on it. So
we built that. It was a wild ride. And then we've moved on to other projects. We're doing something with the Army Corps of Engineers. But this amazing engineer at Syngenta, Ben Spry, came to us and said, I've been following digital twins. It has its ups, it has its downs. It looks like a fad, and some companies have been burned on it. They're sick of third-party companies locking them into proprietary software, having control of their data. And he has become a huge open source fan. He taught himself Blender with an engineering background. So my team has an art and design background. So for us, applying game engines with their real-time capabilities, using Blender to create assets and turn point clouds into 3D models, that's our bread and butter. For him, he discovered there's open source ways that we can do this, and he saw what we had done with NASA, and he came to us and said, can a consumer do this? And better yet, can we build an open source, low-cost platform where anyone can do it? And so that's the specific goal of the Syngenta project, is even a large company can get tired of getting burned trying to figure out digital twins and investing a huge amount of money into it. And so can a flexible platform serve a lot of different needs? And can it all make sense? One of our potential outputs is just a white paper that describes a pipeline that anyone can sort of accessibly understand. And then, of course, the technology, the software, the hardware is always going to be changing. So you'll need to adapt that as you go along. But just what does it take and what does it even involve? And what's even possible? Because a digital twin is not just a digital model, of course. It's real world sensors, real world data, existing computer systems, existing chemical and manufacturing systems, all sending data. That's what we do. We bring it together. Too many times it's just disparate, and that we've had major corporations tell us they can only use 30% of the data that they have because it's just not tied together.
Yep, absolutely. So if I can just triangulate this now, is Ben Spry? Are we talking LSU? Is he Syngenta? How?
Yeah, he's a Syngenta engineer.
Syngenta engineer. Okay. So these chemicals in these facilities, to just brass tacks this, these are for agricultural means?
That's right. So they're an agrochemical company, and they're primarily in Europe, but they have some facilities in Louisiana. So Louisiana, because of the river, developed an enormous petrochemical infrastructure. And a lot of that is centered around oil and gas, but a lot of that is related to that. Like so many plastics and foam and other petroleum related products are also made here that you don't associate or think about. And so there's a big offshoot effect of the economy having a lot more advanced manufacturing here than you would think.
Certainly. So how does fuel, again, future use of energy in Louisiana, enter the equation? Was this a grant?
Yeah, it's an incredible grant. It's the largest NSF, National Science Foundation grant ever. And the NSF is probably the biggest number one funder of science and research to universities and to R&D labs in the country. But this was the biggest one ever, $160 million to invest in the future of energy. So not just oil and gas, but so many alternatives and other things that we all know about, solar, wind, how to inspire and invest in small companies and new ideas, research ideas that might get us to the next big thing, right?
Gotcha.
And so Louisiana has a bit of a sleeper economy in energy because everyone thinks oil and gas. But because of all of that, because of the huge amount of people who care about energy and its usage here, it's a great place for an incubator like that. And Baton Rouge is just an incredible town that is primed for incredible growth. So if the next Houston or the next major energy center of industry and partnership is here, I think that's the goal of Fuel.
Candidly, that's what initially drew me to this project, was a sort of defiance of expectations. It just caught my eye that, Louisiana and LSU was this, a recipient of this grant, but upon further research, this hub of innovation, and what their pursuits are.
I mean, they're looking at everything from unexpected things, like there's a huge sugarcane industry in Louisiana, and the output from that, you take the sugar out and you have just this enormous quantity of waste material that's incredibly energy dense, but it can be used for new energy types. We're also right on the Gulf, so we're very interested in effective wind and tidal energy generation. Huge opportunity for solar here. We have huge amounts of multi-use land. So there's many different opportunities, and we're even interested in, everyone is getting interested today in small modular nuclear reactors. So lots of different opportunities. And everybody knows about LSU football, but what they don't know is that we are just a world-class research institution. Like I said, we're the artists, so we're never the smartest people in the room, but my team gets to have these incredible collaborations with researchers who are doing things that I would never have thought of.
And we're going to get to that as well. I mean, the creative aspects, LSU's aspect, and of course, Michoud, but I'm still glued to this collaboration on the day-to-day. So what was, possibly still is, your role? What are you overseeing, executing?
Yes. So my colleague and I, Derek Ostrenko, worked together to supervise the graduate students. And so this grant from Fuel, almost 100% of the funds are going directly to grad students, funding their education. And then if you're familiar with the grad student model, their assistantship, so their job here in grad school, is to work on this project. They may have backgrounds in game design. They may have backgrounds in 3D modeling. Some of them have film and entertainment backgrounds. But we're using all these different techniques to create the digital twin. And so we supervise those students. We clear out roadblocks for them. We provide a general idea and a direction, but we want this to be a completely new way to do digital twins. And so it's a little bit funny that our students in the beginning were confused, were not sure. They said, well, you guys did a NASA digital twin. We thought you were going to tell us how to do digital twins. And we said, that's not how digital twins work. Every single one is bespoke. The use case is different. The software is different. Every single thing about it is different. And LiDAR scanners, SLAM, all of the software, all the hardware is new or updated constantly. The truth is that we don't know how to do digital twins, but we have made enough mistakes that we know which direction to sort of work in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I read an LSU article, and it stated the aim was to, quote, apply techniques more commonly used in the entertainment industry, leveraging free and open source software and consumer-grade hardware. You did briefly mention them. Can you elaborate which ones we talk in and their applications in entertainment?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of different things. Primarily, we have been using game engines as our central software platform. Unreal Engine is an incredible software that had two big features that we went with right away when we started the NASA project. Lumen, which is real-time global illumination with ray tracing, and Nanite. And Nanite was vital to the NASA project because over 2 million square feet, and we were scanning down to about 2 millimeter accuracy. The number of polygons that we were generating when we were creating meshes from these point clouds was unbelievable. The thing about Nanite that makes it so incredible is, and I don't claim to fully understand it, but what they say is that they never generate more polygons than there are pixels on the screen. And so as you zoom out away from an object that may be quite complex, it intelligently reduces the number of polygons that are being shown. So in the past, you may have played a video game or seen something where the classic example is a tree. You get up close to it in the video game engine, highly detailed and beautiful, but as you back away from it, it sort of pops down to a lower polygon mesh. Well, with Nanite, there's no popping. It's just seamless as you approach and back away from different objects. So with those two things, we're able to have a very large area that is highly detailed, being lit realistically. And it's not that the realism is so important to digital twins, but what it does is it allows the user to offload imagining what we're talking about. Whatever the challenge, whatever the problem is, the thing about that's why we say it's like you're there is because if you're just sitting in an office looking at a blueprint, you have to imagine the space before you can approach the problem. And being able to see something realistically, even that is tracked in real time to its location or to various other sensor inputs, you can offload all of that and just deal with the question at hand, whether you're trying to assist someone who's on site or whether you're trying to plan out the move of a piece of equipment. And so using a real-time game engine, even the first game engines, right, Pong or whatever, they were real-time because you're playing a game. So whatever you do, it's real-time. That is such a huge benefit when you're doing real work, right? And so that's a major piece of entertainment technology. But just these pieces of software like Blender or like Maya, sort of before it, Maya's still going strong, but engineers so frequently they use software that is like SolidWorks or 3ds Max or the kind of CAD-based software that you would need if you were really going to make an object. And so the priorities are in high accuracy, solid-based modeling, whereas our software, the priorities are in interoperability with game engines, with looking realistic and having realistic textures. So there's a little bit of our stuff works faster, works more cleanly together, and all works in real time. We say that game engines are kind of like race cars, right? The reason they are able to go so fast is there's no comfort features, right? There's no cup holders in a race car. And so when we work in a game engine, if we want this feature or that feature, we have to plug it in. So setting it up all takes a little bit longer, but that's how we're able to see a realistic version of the world in real time. And it's pretty amazing.
It seems so effective. It's so imaginative. We talked about the genesis of this project with Syngenta. I'm just curious, assuming it was back in the early Michoud days or even preceding it, A moment you recall when you realized a game engine could unlock industrial insights? I mean, you knew how effective they were, but just that direct correlation. Do you have a moment that sticks out in your memory bank as to when you realized what it could do for industrial applications?
We have learned time and time again, and this is not to cast shade on anybody at all, because all of these things are so big, so hard to do. But we've seen time and time again that the problems are quite simple. I can think of a situation in a factory, not to be named, that they told us that the first time they used it, they believe they saved $10 million. They're like, oh my gosh, what was the problem? What did you do? Well, we checked to see if it would fit through the garage door. And it wasn't going to fit. People have told us that they have built things that they had to tear down a wall to get it out of a room. And in a factory that has high security, that may be government related, you have to fill out a form just to get out a man lift. And so if the digital twin is just an accurate representation of the architecture that you believe in, you can take a measurement in the digital twin and you can make a lot of progress down the path of planning something out. Simple roadblocks are still the number one problem in manufacturing. Logistics, supply chain. We can tie all of that in, and it's really not complicated. There's nothing that, there's no secrets there. But having it synthesized is just amazing. We built the visual model, the digital model, and we're like, oh, that's it. Great job, everyone. Shake hands all around. But we realized that as they started to get into it, we're talking about NASA now, they've found more and more use cases for us to be able to implement. And eventually we built an entire data catalog of everything they had. So you could pull up a picture of it. You could pull up its location. You could pull up every catalog and safety sheet about it, where it came from. And so the data catalog then became the most valuable part of the digital twin, because you could see live sensors, or you could query things about it like, show me every piece of equipment in this factory that was built in China, or something like that. So there are a lot of different use cases. And we were like, all right, well, we did it. Data catalog, model, everyone, great. And then we came around and we added what we call an ontological map. So a real-time relationship map. I can send you some images, but imagine a sphere for each object, and you can click on it and go directly to the data catalog, but with lines drawn between them that can show relationships between manufacturers, between physical interoperability in the factory itself. So that gave us more of how is everything tied together? What is actually happening between pieces in the factory? And the final major component that we added to the NASA digital twin was an AI chatbot. AI kind of happened while we were doing this project. When we started it, we wouldn't have known what you were talking about, really. And by the time we were done, we added an AI that could take all of these disparate data points, and you could just ask it questions in natural language. And so from the start of the project, the game engine window was the full screen. And then it got smaller and smaller and smaller until what we had was a dashboard surrounding it with all these different capabilities and different lenses on the big picture that you could choose to use based on your needs at any given point.
What a revelation it must have been when AI just breaks through the universe and comes through when you guys were in the early part of this.
There's just nothing like, so I tell people all the time, a person can look at a spreadsheet, 2 spreadsheets, 3 spreadsheets, correlate a dozen points of data, and maybe see some insights. AI is doing exactly that, but it's just doing it 10x or 100x or 1000x, and it can focus for longer. The type of insights that are gleaned just from being able to correlate more data points across larger spreadsheets. And we had someone tell us, we have spreadsheets the size of Tiger Stadium. We just can't understand all the data. We just can't. And so we like to demystify AI and say that in this particular instance, the agent is just doing that kind of brain work for you. And it can say, we had an instance where they were complaining, oh, this piece of equipment, doesn't work on certain days. It's like, well, it's always when that door over there is open. It's a humidity issue, So it's just stuff that if you work there long enough, you would figure that out, right? And so what we found is There are these old timers in any given industry who know it all. They can listen to an engine and see, they know exactly what's wrong with it. It's ticking in that certain way. The problem is those people are retiring, and we're losing a lot of that. We need to train databases on these previously indescribable data types, right? So that we can correlate those kind of insights indefinitely.
Absolutely. A question on the students.
Yeah.
Now, their previous skills, I think, so we're talking game design and 3D modeling. How do you bridge that knowledge gap between students trained in them and the sort of just the precise requirements that industrial facilities would require?
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, even for us as well, we went through training on and a lot of meetings on how to work with engineers,
Okay.
how to work with highly technical people, and on people who turn wrenches. And both of those skill sets are vital. And our skill set, we had to prove that ours was worth anything. Sort of making a triangle of perspectives coming together to try to improve efficiency and things like that. We also went through a lot of security training. The whole facility down there is CUI, controlled unclassified information. And so we had to elaborately develop security measures and security facilities so that the information that we gathered was secure and was served in a secure manner to the user. But our students, we've sort of become a startup in a way, because we pull artists out of art and design. We pull computer science students out of computer science and engineering, and we have built incredible relationships with all the faculty across these programs. But we pull their students in and we say, look, your whole educational life, you've been served up. Here's how you get an A. What we're going to give you today is a problem, and you got to take the ball and run with it. And here's your new best friend, a computer science programmer. And so we if we can find the right teams, though, and the right partners, you couldn't do it without the artists, and you couldn't do it without the programmers. We also have what we call technical artists. And so all of that together, it really makes a little business where we like to say we de-risk R&D for clients, because they have everyday problems. They kind of think technology could solve it, but they don't have time to teach themselves a completely different background to even their visionaries within it. It takes a lifetime to change completely your approach to doing work, right? So we can help them find pathways that technology might solve a problem, and at some level, we can also try to solve it for them.
Surely. If my homework's right, there is a vision for VR and or XR to be implemented?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are definitely going to do AR. So the question is delivery, because AR goggles and glasses are changing so fast. When we started the NASA project, we were using Microsoft HoloLens, which has been deprecated since then. They were going to make a HoloLens 2, and then it was canceled after the Army withdrew a contract. We could have told you on day one the HoloLens was never going to cut it, because it was so uncomfortable, number one, so heavy. The visual effect of it was so poor. It was incredible for the time, but that's how fast all this stuff is changing. But we still had AR because of security reasons. Actually, the whole thing had to be served on Amazon GovCloud, and because of that, we had this web-based, really fast, all server-side rendering and calculation. So we were able to serve directly to phones, tablets, laptops, PCs. And so you could be in an office at Stennis working, and you could be working directly with someone holding up their phone in the factory, doing an AR overlay of the thing. For the Syngenta project, we're lucky we're just riding a wave, basically, of an incredible pace of technological improvement, because with the web-based tools that we can implement just on our phone and just on like a MetaQuest 3, we can run the entire current version of the Syngenta digital twin running on the MetaQuest 3. And so the only thing that is server side is the multiplayer aspects of it. So we're using a game engine. So if you and I are working together in the twin, we're multiplayers in a game, which is very cool.
Wow. Wow. Okay, Jason, just a few more on Syngenta, then we're going to dig deeper on Michoud, if you'd be so kind. But
Of course.
Keen on hearing about a moment when something really wasn't working technically or creatively and how you and or the team pulled through.
Yeah, so we're using an open source game engine called Godot, which we're very excited about. It is incredibly lightweight. It can take you hours to download and install Unreal Engine and just open it for the first time. Truly, it can. With Godot, it downloaded so fast, I had to check and see if it had downloaded correctly. It's incredibly lightweight, but it's just not as robust. Now, that's a huge benefit because we want to run this on super light hardware, but we have been enjoying building a lot of the things that we would have been able to rely on in Unreal Engine. So our lead programmer, Darius, who is a student, of course, has been working with multiplayer. And he's like, I got hands working in multiplayer. We're like, oh, that's great. He's like, well, the problem is when I move my hand, all the hands move. Like, oh, everyone in the game everyone is like moving their hands, touching the same things at the exact same time. And so we have a little bit of a conflict there between what's running user side and what's running server side. And so when using more lightweight tools, we have to come back and provide some of the capabilities that would have just been there for us with different software, right? Anytime you're using, and that speaks to that's true for the drones that we're using this time, as opposed to the ones we were using before. Even the laptops, we're trying to make sure that everything that we're using, a consumer could get. Now, they'd probably be a pretty well-resourced consumer, but a much different factor of expense than what we've worked with before on really large projects.
Do you see this model, game engines, open source software, becoming a standard in the industry, or do you think there's always going to be this class of ultra high fidelity, pricey, tool-based digital twins?
I think there's always going to be great tools coming out of companies that primarily do this. We've seen some incredible software from some of our partners. We've seen it at conferences, and that's fantastic. I hope that the result of this is two things. One, that people who can't afford to get involved with those softwares, either because of expense or because of complexity, can still use them. Currently in digital twinning, there is no money in digitally twinning your house or a church or a cemetery. These are projects, or a museum, really, because there's no money behind that. It takes a large investment to do a real digital twin right now. But if we make a free open source pipeline, we can help people digitally twin the world and make everything smart. But the second thing that I hope comes from it is that these incredible companies doing incredible large-scale projects, it influences them to make things a little more open, because it doesn't benefit anyone but them if they scan your data and will only let you open it in their platform and won't let you export it. And then your contract runs out and they want another huge, it's a bit silly. And so I hope that the higher level of value they do provide, it remains justified.
Last question on Syngenta specifically. What has been the most valuable lesson you've taken from this digital twin project?
The best part of doing these is every one of them is different. And it's been so nice to get back down to a nuts and bolts level where everything is hard, but everything is also within reach. The NASA project started us off, and it was so vast and so complex and so many zeros that it was a bit mind-blowing. Previously in entertainment technology, sure, films do cost a lot of money, theatrical productions cost a lot of money, but there's also a lot of like grit and duct tape or gaff tape that goes into making things work. And the best thing about the Syngenta project is we're back down to that kind of a level where sometimes I have to go to the hardware store. I love solving problems like MacGyver and putting it all together. And I'm really proud that the students are going to get to put this in their portfolio. as something that they are going to give back to the industry. And so when we're talking about the future use of energy, if we can provide a platform that's just out there that anybody can use, that can make planning or manufacturing faster and easier, that just removes roadblocks to innovation and to building up infrastructure. Yeah, I will say one more thing about the Syngenta project, and that's this. We have a specific use case that we've discovered that Ben, our engineer, discovered that he showed us recently. They have a huge tank, a pressure vessel, that's completely encapsulated by pipes and cables, thousands and thousands, and they have to take it out and replace it. And he has designed the twin that he's working on, his version of it, that he can move the pressure vessel through the factory and anything it touches turns red. And they can exactly calculate how much it's going to cost to move that out of there by figuring out how many wrench turns it's going to take, how many people it's going to take.
Wow.
To move those pipes, to move those sensors and put them back very specifically. And so they can calculate different paths and which one is going to cost more and which one is going to cost less.
Data-driven decision-making gets thrown around a lot, quite loosely, and that is a prime example of it, though. Outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just simple problems, but smarter ways to approach them.
Tremendous, Jason. So, Michoud, $7.5 million federally funded. I'm going to try not to be redundant here because we've touched on this slightly. 2 million square feet, I think you'd said?
Yeah.
I think it has the moniker America's Rocket Factory. My first question, I think you mentioned this acronym earlier, CUI, and I guess non-CUI. So this ties into there were 2 digital twins and 2 essentially processes, right?
That's right. And so before we could even get our hands on the CUI data, which went on for longer than you would expect, since they did ask us to do the project, but we eventually, of course, got it and we were able to move forward. But there were some months there in the beginning where, and you have to understand, this was the first time we'd ever heard of what a digital twin was. We had to figure out what on earth we were doing, but we couldn't have any point clouds from the facility for several months. So I went onto the internet and I was like, well, what is there? You are not allowed to take photos in Michoud, but they have released quite a few. There are some PDFs of overhead, I won't say blueprints, but overhead floor plans that are of some detail. They were okay. And we just got to the point where we had to have something to work with to get started. And so I took the PDF into Blender and I just outlined all the walls with lines and I extruded that up. And we had been there once. And so I thought, I think that's 35, 40 feet. So I extruded it up 40 feet. I drew the trussing. I drew the columns. I put it in there. I made the texture up. I made the floor texture up. And we've actually found like a 3D model of the SLS rocket on Thingiverse or Sketchfab or something. And I put it in there, scaled it up. And we started using that as the level, the environment that we were building our game engine user interface around. And we showed a few screenshots to NASA, and I think somebody put it on LinkedIn, and they called us right away, and they said we had to take it down. Yep. And we were like, well, what do you mean? You know, it's this is not CUI. We don't even have any CUI. I made this entirely off of matching photos from Google Images and matching the lighting color, but we went really hard on it. They were like, no, you got to take that down right away.
Wow. Top
so we were
secret.
happy because we were like, all right, well, we're like heading in the right direction here.
Surely. Yeah. It's a prime validation.
Yeah. Oh, it was great.
Again, now correct this homework if it is false. The non-CUI twin required hand modeling, quote, from entirely public available data, right?
That's right.
What were those sources, if you can recall? Are we talking like just Google Earth, like NASA press photos? How?
Incredible stuff. Google Images, Google Maps. So for the overhead, for the outside stuff.
Yeah.
But there's an enormous community of third-party companies who make bespoke equipment. And those people I'm certain they have permission. They put photos of the equipment on their websites. So you can figure out, like, if you could get one photo off of Google Images and you see a brand name, then you can search their website. Like, oh man, look, there's 4 photos of this thing from other angles. And so we just developed this capability of 3D modeling from a 2D photo. There's a whole workflow there that, the best thing about it is we don't have to make it the right size, right? So in my background in production design, it was basically doing architecture for entertainment. And so it was all about how tall is this wall, or how wide is the average doorway? The great thing about 3D modeling for a game engine is you just make it, as long as it is what you want it to be, you can scale it up or scale it down later. It's never going to re-enter reality, right? And so with a couple of photos, we could 3D model the whole thing and sort of reference it like, well, we sort of know one measurement. We know that the rocket is 35, I think, feet in diameter, maybe 30. So we can sort of scale. Well, this modular staircase platform that they use to work on it, it's got to be 35 feet tall too. And so, but working and comparing and just fighting against, it was actually really wonderful that we had that time to develop a workflow without the CUI data, because the CUI data hit like an avalanche, petabytes of point clouds. Even just to open them, we have documents on how to do that.
Yeah. Now, I know you're not NASA PR, but I was just all too curious. 2 millimeter accuracy, LiDAR scan across 2 million feet. That level of precision, what does that enable that otherwise would not be possible for a facility like Michoud?
That's a great question. And I will say that eventually we arrived at the realization that you do not need that level of accuracy for a lot of things. And it would really hold you back if you committed to that. It can be really useful. So this was a realistic twin. If a piece of machinery has a big dent in it, it has rust on it, if a safety sticker has been missing, we have it in the twin because it was that kind of a twin. But we realized that a big wall, it could be one polygon. It doesn't matter, right? Why on earth would we have all the bumps and drywall faults and stuff like that? Like why on earth would we do that? So we stopped doing that. We didn't do that in the final twin. And so we eventually had a process where you would choose how important you thought something was, right? Can all the fire extinguishers be the same? Yes. It's not, their unique traits are not important to their function as a fire extinguisher, right? But all of the equipment in Michoud is sort of custom and bespoke. You know how the ends of the rockets are sort of domed? Well, they have these big Gore welders that automatically weld these triangular dome-shaped pieces into these big domes. There aren't many of those in the world. I have actually seen in some other rocket companies' factories. Blue Origin's has one very similar. I'm sure SpaceX must have the same thing, but it's not like a table saw you can go get at Home Depot. And so those type of objects did benefit from really accurate modeling, from maintenance and replacing parts. So we could tell you how many hours were on a crane arm before you had to replace its bearings, all the way down to training. They are constantly standing the rocket up and laying it down and turning it around. And they do it so infrequently that it's almost always somebody else doing it, someone who has never done it for the first time. So they strongly benefit from having this millions and millions of dollars thing practiced in VR or on a PC, so you can see. They have to make a few really tight corners because this facility they started building this facility. They made plywood glider bombers in World War II at Michoud. So they've been building onto this facility since the 40s. And there are big floor patches where it can take a certain amount of weight, but other ones can take more. So we added a capability where you could, in AR, get a heat map of which floor panels could take the amount of weight that you needed. And so you could plan out the route because they're rolling this giant rocket around. And different parts and pieces of it at different times, they can't make any mistakes.
Excellent. Just excellent. You mentioned earlier the HoloLens, Microsoft HoloLens, was being called upon? Was that just at the time a broad personal favorite? Was there something about it that just made it a apt fit for Michoud?
We were looking for a solution that was going to be AR so that you could see some of the real world. And camera pass-through on VR goggles was just not there yet. Even today, if you're doing something that's really important, that involves safety, that involves precision, it's hard to rely on camera pass-through. I think it's just starting to get there. I had a Vision Pro on for the first time recently and was very impressed with the camera pass-through on that. But even just hand-eye coordination is a little altered with that. So we wanted to be able to have true AR, where the image is being overlaid onto actual light from reality. And I think in the next year, we're going to see hardware come out that will enable that. But HoloLens also had a history of being used by the military and other government agencies. So we at least wanted to check it out and see if it was ready to go. But for our purposes at that time, it was not.
How does working with a federal agency like NASA compare to industry projects like Syngenta in terms of workflow, creativity, constraints?
There are similarities and differences. Any large organization has to have systems to provide checks and balances, to create security, both data security, but also just like workforce safety. And the larger an organization is, and maybe the older it is, the little bit more Byzantine it can become. Especially if you're doing things that are bespoke, that each time you're doing it, you're sort of doing it again for the first time. You don't have the assembly line where there is a rapid fire process that we could just get on board. And so through absolutely the fault of no one, there was a lot of learning as we went, right? Because we just started on day one trying to make a digital twin, but we were changing tires while we were going down the racetrack. With a deadline, with funding comes deadlines. And so we had to meet our milestones. We also had to define what those milestones were, because digital twinning is still being defined by what it is. If you go to a conference and people start talking about what is digital twins, I usually leave, because it's a topic that is greatly debated and there's no real answer to. Some people say that it's only a digital twin if the digital version is controlling reality, because the full data loop is there where the sensor data is feeding in. And so the digital twin is smart enough to say, oh, it's time to, it's 6 p.m. Most people are going home. It's time for me to turn the temperature down a little bit, and extrapolate that to 1,000 different other more serious things. And that's some people's version of what a real digital twin is. But yeah, it's a wonderful project, a wonderful kind of project to be a part of.
Absolutely. What did you most extract from the Michoud experience that you were able to apply to the Syngenta twin?
Just a real belief that we can help people do work. You never want technology to be distracting. You never want to just splash a bucket of AI or a bucket of game engine all over a problem, or even all over people trying to get work done, because they don't want it. And if they don't need it, it's a bad thing to do. I think that's how some digital twins left a bad taste for people, because it can involve a lot of things and a lot of time and money invested that don't lead anywhere. Today, when we first meet someone who's a potential client, we say, give us a list of your everyday challenges. And if any of those stand out to us as something that we can help you deal with, that actively makes it faster, or actively removes roadblocks, or actively improves communication or visualization or interactivity, then we will help you. Otherwise, we're not going to waste your time or our time creating a 1 millimeter accurate model of the bottom of your shoe.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So before we go further, Jason, let's rewind. You're a 20-year veteran of the entertainment industry in New York City. having worked as a production designer and design supervisor for HBO, Netflix, Paramount, the History Channel, and both on and off Broadway. Was interactive or just innovative tech a part of that chapter for you?
What a great question, because I'm old enough that when I got into production design, when I studied it in school as an undergrad, everything was still hand-drawn drafting. We would do CAD drafting, but it was still 2D. And so I'm extensively trained in something that's totally useless now, which is drawing walls and doors and things like that in two-dimensional drawings, right? We do elevation, we do a section, we do a ground plan. And then technical directors would interpret how to build that. And they're amazing because we half the time couldn't even visualize something in 2 dimensions well enough. If you just imagine like a section of a door jamb and all the layers and of trim and functional elements that are involved there, it's incredible. And so I really benefited from being in the right place at the right time, where 3D technology, 3D drawing, informed both our blueprints, but also our visualizations, so that we could talk to directors or producers about what we were planning, right? And so as 3D technology came into all of this, I came up as a kid playing video games, and my friends and I loved playing video games. But at some point we realized that some games came with level editors where you could make your own levels for something. And that and those pieces of software were so far ahead in 3D modeling of AutoCAD or any other industry-based software at the time, because they had to be simple enough for the user to use, and it had to ultimately output a visually appealing 3D world or whatever it was. And so learning that, I think I even at some point used a game engine to show someone a 3-dimensional idea that I had that I was trying to communicate. And so combining those ideas together and being in the entertainment world at the right time when those things started to become possible, that's where my niche came from.
Can you recall your first wow moment that made you realize digital tools could transform physical design?
Yeah, I wanted to do a design for a play. Actually, it was a Midsummer Night's Dream, and I wanted like a huge flower in the middle of the stage, and the flower would be composed of these different columns, hollow columns that people could pop up out of, but the whole thing would be sort of conical and rounded. And even though I've been trained on perspective drawing, I've done a lot of drawing something that complex, that has both this sort of hemispherical curve, but all of these sort of beehive columns cut into it, was out of my reach. But I can remember that I used a software called Vectorworks to create a series of tubes, and then sort of a conical piece that I used a Boolean to subtract the shape, one shape from another, resulting in and so that was my first procedural sort of design work. Something that I used parameters to create something that I sort of believed would happen, but I couldn't envision myself. So that was just incredible. Only later did I realize about the history of parametric design, which I think is just incredible. I'll tell you a story. You can always cut this out if you want.
Please.
But so Antonin Gaudi, when he designed Sagrada Familia, he wanted the arches to sort of appear to fall toward the heavens. And what he did was he designed the model for Sagrada Familia upside down. It's a physical model, and you can still see it. A lot of people have seen it in the museum, but he used string and weights to calculate the arches falling above the church so that he could then translate that into his architectural drawings. So using parameters to design that which you cannot envision, absolutely incredible. And so I sort of got there on no scale like Gaudi, but got there on my own through game design software. But I'm so appreciative of being able to use these tools, even AI today that is receiving so much hate, to be able to use tools like this to get where we're going, get somewhere we couldn't get on our own.
Yep. Who or what sparked your passion for the arts or creativity?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, I had always been interested in art and creativity, but I think in the world today, there's very little arts education in public schools. And I had a very poor arts education growing up all the way through high school. I didn't really get into creativity at all until I was in high school. And my best friend, his dad was our English teacher and also our theater teacher. And I started hanging out in the theater because my friend was there and because other people were there. And these were the first friends that I really had because I was a big nerd. And so a place where I could help out and I knew how to build things and that was valuable drew me into a community of creativity that really opened my eyes to a much larger world. My dad was a contractor. And so being able to create things, being able to build scenery for them, I had those kind of skills. And I realized that I could use the things my dad had taught me to create imaginary worlds from stories and from entertainment. And putting those two things together for me was a spark that just ignited the rest of my life. And that's still what I do today, really.
Beautiful. If there is a separate answer, who or what sparked your passion for technology and innovation?
I guess I did because I grew up in a very small town in Virginia. We grew up poor, and technology became a window out into a broader world. Even the way that we travel a lot today and can just go to a nearby city wasn't really done as much when I was young, where I was young. And so when we first got a computer, when we later got the internet a few years later, actually it was great that we didn't have the internet when I first got a computer. I probably put 4 years worth of work into learning Photoshop as like a 12 to 16-year-old. And so the internet hit when I was in middle school as an explosion of course it existed before that, but hit us as an explosion of connectivity just to a much larger world. I had been a huge reader, and imaginary worlds and storytelling, how you communicate ideas and messages was huge for me. And the digital world, the technological world just sped that up 1,000 times faster.
We're going to come to LSU shortly. My last question before LSU, you taught scenic design and virtual production in Nebraska. Is that right?
I did.
Where you led the New Paradigm Media Committee. How did that experience shape what came to be your LSU vision?
Yeah, it was funny. I was in New York City for 11 years, working across the entertainment industry in a lot of different fields. And I started doing some teaching. And I taught for a while at a private high school, which I loved. And I realized that ultimately I wanted to live in a house. I wanted to drive a car. I wanted to leave New York City. So I went back to grad school at the University of Arizona in production design to get my master's degree so that I could teach at the college level. And I brought all of my scenic design experience, and a lot of technology was part of that, as I was saying. But it wasn't really until the pandemic hit that we started looking at alternative ways to do all of this stuff. Somebody said the biggest takeaway from the pandemic, it was that it actually moved everything forward 10 years because we had a really good reason to stop doing a bunch of stuff that we were doing because that's what we did. So during the pandemic, we needed a way to do live performances, not in the same room. And we created new virtual workflows that enabled us to do that. So that's where I really got into virtual production in a big way. We use a huge green screen, just absolutely enormous, to film our theatrical productions. And then I put the video performances into Blender as a 2D media plane. And so the actor performing their performance, I would put into 3D worlds that we designed. So we used a lot of classical paintings, and we would go into Photoshop and cut out the trees and then put those in as a 3D asset. And so we made these incredible worlds and very lifelike performances of anything that we wanted. combining the actors with these backgrounds. So it was really, really cool. And it was about that time that virtual production, the way we think of it today, really hit, where you have a giant LED screen or even a fully round LED wall. It had been going on for a while, but The Mandalorian really was the huge, big proof of concept of virtual production. And so if you've seen it, The Mandalorian, his armor is totally mirrored. And so they couldn't just use green screen because they would never be able to get the green off of that mirrored surface. And so they said, okay, well, what can we look at here? And they, even concerts in the 70s used arrays of grids of light bulbs to make images. But ever since that time, the bulbs have been getting smaller, and they finally got small enough that they could appear in camera and be believable. And so even in what was the Sandra Bullock movie, Gravity, they used virtual production. They had grids of light bulbs or grids of LEDs that they made the space images just to get the reflections in the helmets of the astronaut helmets. But the bulbs were not small enough at that time to show the screens on camera. But with The Mandalorian, they finally were. And so they created that huge, big volume. And so since I had a big entertainment background, and because I had been experimenting with virtual production, LSU is incredibly forward-thinking. They were one of the first. Now there's probably 25 schools with LED volumes, but LSU was one of the first 4 years ago to have one. And they funded it through the Louisiana Economic Development Group, which is just an incredible group that invests in projects like this. And a lot of the funds came from the Entertainment Development Fund. So Louisiana is a huge film industry here, and tax dollars that were siphoned off and sent directly for education or earmarked for education helped fund the XR Studio here where our LED volume is.
Wow. I could not drop a more fitting segue for LSU and forward thinking, because I'd love to pivot to the XR Studio.
Yeah.
Specifically, of which you are the director.
Right.
Did you take the reins at its onset, and what is its mission?
Yeah, so part of the grant that funded the studio and all of its hardware and software also funded my position here. And so I came in at the beginning. They had actually already bought the LED wall, and they had found a space, and they had started teaching classes. And I came in and I benefited from all of that preparatory work that they had done, and just joined the team. And it was so funny because right as I got here to do that, one of my close colleagues, Derek, came up to me and said, "We just found out about this NASA project. I don't know how much you want to be involved in that." And I said, 100%. And so it was just like history from there. But with the XR Studio, ever since that day, we have combined doing film, virtual production, video game design. We have a full motion capture suite. So we do motion capture, like skeletal capture for video games, for films. Like if you want to put a monster into a game or a film, but you want to use human tracked motion. We've actually done motion capture testing for a major feature film that's being created in New Orleans by a company called Swaybox. I can say, I think that they have announced that they're doing a Batman animated feature film with their incredible puppetry technology. And so we sort of are a hub of anything cutting edge. If you want to experiment with technology and with digital media, we can bring together hardware and software. And if it's not expertise, it's people who can ask the right questions to work on a project. And it's absolutely the most fun that I've ever had.
Delightful. So if I can just square this. So we're talking a grant. How much time elapsed between the grant that created the XR Studio and the Michoud project?
I guess about a year.
Okay.
It was probably a $1.5 million grant that created the XR Studio and the extensive equipment and hardware there. But it was over 5 years. And so we're still actually in that grant period. And we're able to support our classes and continue to buy new equipment, new cameras, new things as they come up. But it's been vital. I don't know, even though the NASA project had 2 large grants funded with it, the LED grant was like a jumpstart for everything that we did for forging our team.
Yeah.
And that collaboration is everything.
Yeah.
And then the NASA grant as well, those funds gave us a project, gave us a lot of equipment, but also built a team. We had 24 graduate students who earned their degrees paid their full assistantships off the NASA project. And so now those people work in engineering firms in town. They work for Epic Games. They work for major entertainment companies. It's the community and the team that those funds really bought and paid for, and that is our ongoing capability.
Who gets to, I'm going to say, join or participate, be a member, and how?
Yeah, so anyone at LSU can use the XR Studio, and now we have the digital twinning studio. We have a spatial computing lab, and this semester we are just opening the digital humans lab, where we're digitally twinning LSU athletes, but we're going to learn how that information can be valuable for everyone. All health and wellness data, injury recovery data, but anyone at LSU can use any of our facilities. We're a community. We have stakeholders in 4 or 5 different colleges. We have students taking our classes from all those colleges. We have the biggest thing that we've been able to do, and I've been in academia for quite a while now. Our biggest success is removing or ignoring barriers between organizations and structures and funding mechanisms, and just bringing lots of people together who want to learn and want to do stuff, and focusing on projects and hands-on work.
Tremendous. And salute, because that's something that breaking down of silos is definitely a chief pursuit of our scene as well. So Godspeed,
Cool.
man.
Thanks.
So it sounds like enlisting those accomplishments, I was going to ask if today, you said we're coming up on 5 years, right? Roughly. If it is.
Yeah, this is my 4th year, yeah.
Okay, tremendous. If it is where you anticipated it would be in terms of capability, output, reception.
It's so much more.
Great.
You know, these you hope that an academic institution can build a facility and that it can grow. You hope that it can do some outside work, it can forge some community partnerships. And we have just been so fortunate, and we have honestly relentlessly pursued every angle or opportunity that has come across to us. One of Fender Guitar's subsidiary brands, Presonus, shoots all their commercials in our studio now, or many of them. We've shot LSU sports media that's been shown around the world for the LSU Heisman campaign, for the national championship gymnastics team. We've shot music videos for artists who are national brands. And so we worked very hard to, we say yes to almost everything. We've shot local restaurant commercials, and the same day that we are doing LiDAR scanning of a Mississippi River floodgate sluice or something like that.
How versatile.
Yeah.
Which XR Studio project inspired the most awe in you?
Well, I have a personal project called Keepsake. That's a children's TV show that I started creating for my daughter, who's 5 now. But I first envisioned it when I started doing green screen work in Nebraska, and she was 2, and I wanted to make something for her. I worked on it and created it and put a lot of time into it. But when I got to LSU, we had the resources here that I could make it a flagship production, because we needed to do something that was our big virtual production signature. And so it's a show just like Sesame Street, but it takes place in medieval times, and it's sort of a fantasy character journey that a 3 or 4-year-old can really appreciate. And my daughter got to be in it, and it's gotten tens of thousands of views across YouTube and different platforms.
I was going to say this is viewable on YouTube. Right
Yeah.
Okay.
It's at Keepsake Kids, I believe, is the YouTube channel. But check it out. It's pretty great. And there are projects that bring in income. There are projects that give us incredible skills and lots of great toys. But there's also incredible projects that build impact that nobody could really have a problem with. It's just good. It's just sweet to do things for kids and to build something and use all of these capabilities and knowledge for something that's just truly wholesome. Not that a digital twin is not wholesome, but it's maybe not sweet.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Putting aside Michoud, which project was the most daunting?
Yeah, so we have a new project that's partially funded by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they want us to do a digital twin of a large section of either the Mississippi River or the Morganza Spillway, or there's a little bit of flexibility in negotiation in what it is, but we're a little bit in awe of the potential scope and calculating what level of accuracy we need to use and what kind of hardware we would need to do something that is far beyond 2 million square feet is a little bit daunting. Yeah, we have a pretty good hold on what the use cases are. And like I said, we focus on what problems do we want to solve. So one of the biggest problems is decision making when hurricanes happen or when there's major flooding that is happening. It's my understanding that some of the decisions are like, we can't stop flooding. What are we going to flood? And that can be agricultural land, or it could be like a crawfish farm, or it could be a community. And so these kinds of choices that get made based on being able to predict how much flooding, when is the flooding going to be. So we're working with leading coastal researchers here at LSU, and we're working with various stakeholders and municipalities to see what use cases they could most benefit from us tackling.
Terrific. It sure sounds like multiple schools at LSU would have used the XR Studio.
Oh, yeah.
What's been the most just genuinely surprising of just what they wanted to do with it and even how they maybe went about it?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a huge slate of things that you might expect. We've done stand-up comedy. We've done aerial silks. We've done a ton of interviews. We had a local private zoo come in and bring a kangaroo that was hopping around, and we were doing that kind of thing. But the most interesting thing, I think, is that my colleague Derek teaches a class called XR Performance. And so in that class, it's the primary class where we're not just using the LED volume as a big TV, but rather as a window into the digital world. We always say that we try to thin the wall between the digital world and the real world anywhere that we can. And we can cross over it by scanning things with photogrammetry or LiDAR, or by 3D printing or CNC milling something from the digital world. We're always trying to connect those things together in any way possible. And we want to control the border of those worlds so that we can provide solutions across them. But in the XR Studio, Derek brings all of those capabilities, real-time sensors, photogrammetry, tracking of people, and skeletal tracking and facial tracking, and he makes creative works with them. So we have dancers that are doing choreography that is being mirrored by live metahumans on the screen, or they burst into flames because they're using a software called Touch Designer to create intricate real-time particle simulations. It's where we get to use our equipment as toys. That's where we really invent things that we then feed back into providing unlikely solutions, because we play and our sandbox gives us a capability or an expertise that is really well-rounded.
Great. The relationship you share with Derek, was it just incidental? You two met? Do you go back?
I met Derek when I came here, and we work elbow to elbow every single day. And it's a good thing we like each other, because we see a lot of each other. But Derek and our buddy Mark, we're the three tight-knit team members that really make up our, I would say, our digital twinning capability, but really we call it visualization, interactivity, and simulations, because it goes so far beyond digital twins. But the three of us really focus on this capability and these kinds of projects. And Mark is an amazing character himself and a former EA Games executive. So he's our lead game developer and just has an incredible experience and understanding of what it takes for students to work the way a startup or the way that a games company would. Derek has an incredible background in like exhibit design and physical computing and sensors. And so he does a lot of the tying software APIs into the game engine. And, my entertainment background with scenery and architecture, we sort of have a good little triumvirate going here, and it works really well for us.
Sure. Very nice. Well, Mark, Derek, Hats off. Jason, what's the best thing about working on innovation at a university?
I've worked in departments where we were focused on the teaching. And that, of course, is the mission that you want to focus on, that you think is the most important, and it is. Working in innovation empowers us, though, our team, to teach better in a lot of ways. One of which is we're giving the students real-world hands-on projects that not only build their portfolio to get words like NASA or George Washington's Mount Vernon or Syngenta or the Army into their resumes, but they're making something real. Every career, every job, they will be trying to produce something or solve a problem. If they can do that in school, they're that much further ahead of the game. But in the most obvious way as well, all of these projects and all these clients give us tangible and non-tangible resources that fill us out. So whatever we're trying to teach, if we need a camera, we have it. If we need an LED wall, we have it. If we need a robot arm, we have it. And so looking at education as the most important part, but through the lens of the benefits of engaging with partners and stakeholders and investors, it's a smarter way, I really believe. It's a modern way to do education better.
What do you suppose LSU gets as an institution by having a state-of-the-art XR studio?
Well, they get a lot of cash from the grant projects.
Money talks. Yeah.
Money talks. But so LSU obviously has a lot of resources. That was just a joke. But
sure.
The thing that LSU gets from having the XR studio is LSU is here to forge talent, to make badasses. And having the XR studio, which is an interdisciplinary, problem-solving, cutting-edge R&D, what's next kind of a place, focused on the doing, is vital for turning out workforce that companies want, that companies need. Not only that, but our flexibility across colleges and across platforms and academics. They're a place that they can come to if they need to shoot an interview. They're a place that they can come to if they have a problem that they don't even know what the answer is. And if we don't know, we know the people, because most fun part of my job is that I get to go all over campus, meet scientists, meet medical researchers, go into buildings that most people will never see. And so we sort of are at the heart of what we are, a community.
Well said. That's stuff we'd love to hear. Last question on the XR Studio. So it's the year 2030, Jason, and the stars have just continued to align. What does the XR Studio look like, and what's it doing?
Yeah, the XR Studio is still a collaborative hub where people can do anything they need to figure out. It's really just a space, a big space where cutting edge technology meets problems. And we've continued to thin the wall between the digital world and the real world. But the XR Studio is just a part of this bigger slate of labs where we're doing digital humans, where we are doing coastal research. And all of this is using technology to empower students to be the next generation of problem solvers and empower LSU to help lead those challenges.
Is there a particular, not to potentially put you on the spot, but either new or not even yet realized technology that you're more or less waiting on, that by this hypothetical 2030 question could exist and drastically alter something?
Yeah, people always say, like, what does the future hold? And especially when you're talking about 5 years, you sort of know. And it's sort of more like the refinement or the perfection of the technology that we have today that's kind of bad. So everything from great augmented reality goggles or glasses or contact lenses volumetric video, so real 3D video at a high frame rate, so that when we are analyzing the quarterback's injuries, when he cocks back for a throw, we can pause reality and just zoom in and check out his ankle or his knee. It's improvements in things like that where we have it today, but it will be bigger and better and faster, moving everything we can to real time. Imagine we're very interested in real-time digital twins. So let's say a firefighter arrives on a scene and he has tool-mounted or equipment-mounted cameras and sensors that are in real time correlating data with satellites, with drones, with his vehicles. And so that we can predict and we can identify where there may be victims inside the house or where there may be structural faults that are about to give way. All of this is possible today, but doing it in real time and doing it consistently and creating platforms that do it for us, that's what's next.
Exciting. Jason, I'd like to talk about leadership and creativity for a bit. It's easy upon researching you to notice that you're passionate about developing artists, and I'm curious if you would say it's common for there to be initial resistance from the artistic people to bleeding edge tech.
You mean moving artists into technological projects?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of resistance from our students,
Really?
and it's pretty amazing. Most parents, I think, don't want their children to go into the arts, and I totally understand why. I actually try to save their children from the fate that they fear for their children by moving them into hands-on real-world projects that can be effective and thereby are more likely to lead to a career. I actually personally love the history of the arts. I love painting, drawing, music, the traditional arts so frequently that we discourage students from going into. I think we can protect those arts by making sure that students can study them and also have a clear path to a successful career. Our students don't think about any of those things. They just want to 3D model monsters, or they want to do concept sketches for potential sci-fi movies, and they want to be hired to sort of do what they know how to do, and they would love to get out of school and stop learning things because they've been doing it forever. What I try to empower them with is that they're always going in the real world to be working collaboratively. They may as well get good at it. They are always going to have notes where someone doesn't like what they have done. And the fastest thing to do is take the note. And we struggle a lot with teaching everyone, really, not just the creative people, but certainly the creative people, that it doesn't matter. Every pixel cannot be precious, and none of this really belongs to you. You may create fine art. You may go into landscape painting and spend 3 years making a beautiful painting. But any job or any career or any collaborative project, it's about getting to, frankly, good enough at any given point that we can move on and improve it later, polish it later, but meet the use cases, deliver, and reassess. So part of our biggest challenge, and it's a good question, is moving students from an educational model where they traditionally just receive information, and if they spit it back out, they get an A, to one where we hope they become our leaders in a given topic. We have a student who is the best LiDAR scanner. We have a student who's the best drone pilot. We don't have enough faculty for each of us to be the definitive expert on all of these topics. We come in and give a lecture, but we often try to teach them how to learn, and we hope. And so we also say that we throw them underwater and we see who floats to the top. And our leaders arise through these projects based on, honestly, it's not always the smartest kid. It can be the person who's most interested, and they put the hours in, and they become the boss of their area. So,
what has ever been a constraint that forced you and the team to be more creative?
Yeah, I love constraints. I think they're the best thing. There's nothing worse than blank page syndrome. And when I was in entertainment technology, when I was in entertainment design, the constraints were everything. The size of the film studio, the budget, the timeline, the preferences and limitations are the preferences of the director and the producer. And those, if you can cross-reference all of your limitations, it gives you not necessarily the shape of a thing, but like the shape of the whole that it might fit into. So I love constraints and limitations. They're the best thing ever. The students can experience challenges wrapping their head around a multifaceted series of limitations. But in thinking of what the biggest limitation or what was the question again? Sorry.
No, sure. When a constraint has almost forced creativity.
Yeah, all the time, all the time.
Yeah. There's a famous quote, Jason, that goes, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few." Can you recall any instances of that beginner's mind leading to some sort of breakthrough or success?
Absolutely. That happens all the time with our students who they know just enough to be dangerous, frankly. And a lot of times we think about limitations like, well, this is a photogrammetry problem, or this is a LiDAR problem. Frequently, they are still exploring the differences between use cases for these different technologies. And so they might try both. And they might uncover that there's a level of detail that they're getting from LiDAR that we would never have thought to do LiDAR on a smaller object. We've recently started doing photogrammetry on very large objects with drones, and normally we would consider that to not be accurate enough. But there can be a lot of benefits to it. We can get foundational textures that we might improve upon later, or we can just work very quickly in ways that if our goal is not high accuracy, we can move through milestones and come back and edit later. So it's always interesting when approaches that we may have dismissed are perfectly fine, because kind of related to what I was talking about with just getting things done. If you can move quickly and break things and get further down the road, people are so much better editors than we are creators. We're very good at criticizing. And so if we can make something that we all agree is not that great, but it does exist, the students will buy in at that point. And so not dismissing anything and just letting things sort of organically happen, even if it's a bit of a mess. Students really struggle with a blank page. But when they have something that they have a little bit of ownership of, they know how we got here, and they can see what's wrong with it, well, they love to critique as well. And so getting their buy-in like that really empowers them to say, all right, well, I'll take this bit, and it's small enough that I can work on it. And collectively, the whole thing starts to get where it really needs to go.
Classic case of sum being greater than its parts, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone in there. Beautiful. Yeah. I read in your interview with the Theater Times that you have seen some designers get angry about AI scenic designs.
Yeah. Absolutely. The students also... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, please, I was teeing you up for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of people are really angry about AI. It makes a lot of sense. I see on LinkedIn every day people who it's pretty clear that their current job relies on AI failing, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. The students, too, really are adamant that AI is taking jobs that were theirs. And I do understand where they're coming from, right? There's a ton of creative capabilities. We always hoped that robots were going to take away doing the dishes and changing the oil in my car. And in fact, it took away like writing poetry and making pictures and making videos, which is super unfortunate. But every industry that has ever been disrupted exploded in production. And so I'm trying to tell the artists and all of our students that the artist who uses AI tools will be able to achieve their goals so much faster. They'll be able to do so much more work. I would never want a job where I had to sit in a cubicle And let's say we're doing rotoscoping for film, right? So you have an actor in front of a screen, and traditionally, long ago, you would have to cut out the hair and the edges of the actor so that you could separate them from the green screen. Um, that kind of a repetitive, arduous job, is that the job that these students really want? Is that the job that anyone really wants? Or would you rather say, all right, technology of some kind, whether it's AI or whether it's an algorithm that can just do good rotoscoping, can that artist do more interesting work? Can they produce a film by themselves instead of having to be a cog in a wheel, something much, much larger? And so, as we've sort of seen Hollywood dip in the amount of films it's making and the size of budgets, post-pandemic, the amount of content that's coming out is much, much smaller. And we see people really freaking out that the film industry is not going to go back to what it was. Well, it isn't going to go back to what it was. It'll never be that level again. I think at the height of the pandemic, there were over 700 television shows, scripted shows that you could watch because everybody was at home watching TV. That's not coming back. And the major blockbuster films, at the rate at which they were being produced, are also not coming back. However, a small team or even one person can make a film or a game today that could be huge internationally and make millions and millions of dollars. So what I hope is that all technology tools empower artists to do more, to have more ownership of the work that they're doing. And I would tell my students to get out of the mindset that what they really wanted was a relatively menial job working in a crushingly large industry where they had very little input overall.
Well, I wouldn't for a second doubt your efforts. I'm just curious that given the exponential rate at which these technologies are improving, becoming more prevalent, I'm just curious have you experienced any students who just they wave the white flag and they boogie? I mean, does that happen? I don't want to say on a day-to-day basis, but where they're like, you know what, screw this.
No, because we don't know of any industry or academic field that's a safe haven from AI. There isn't like even menial tasks. The rate of production of robots at this point, we don't even know anything that we're like, definitely only a person could do this. I don't think there's anything left. I think we're going to do things because we want to. People still make violins by hand. People still do opera. People still make landscape paintings.
Vinyl is way back in demand.
Yeah, huge. I think that we'll still do all of these things because we want to. I hope that increases in productivity lead to more availability of resources for everyone, right? That would be fantastic. And if that happens and we continue to do these creative tasks because we want to, in the optimistic view, everybody has more agency and there are less roadblocks and less limitations to keep us from being the most creative that we could be. And more of us doing it, because the people who really have creative agency, even in the best version of today's creative world, a small number of people get to have original ideas, and armies of technicians and artists sort of craft those ideas. Wouldn't it be great if more and more people could share with more and more diverse audiences of specific interest more weird stuff?
I want to escalate this slightly, and this might be a semantic issue in this question, but I have to ask it. Of the many domains you touch, which would be the most sensitive to the arrival of artificial general intelligence, AGI, a super intelligence where something can again, this is why we can get into it's like the digital twin thing. We can debate over the definition, but to just escalate that issue, I'm just curious what you think if that were to arrive. And again, I'm not even saying it would be the end of it, but which domain is just the most sensitive to potential alteration by a superintelligence, a self-improving superintelligence?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer to this would have been really different a few years ago because I would have just said, well, it could write incredible scripts that we would never have,
Hmm.
or it could think faster, it could solve problems faster. What has amazed me is not non-sentient AI. We're sure that ChatGPT and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, these image generators and video generators, we're quite sure that they are not general AI, right? They're not sentient, but they can they can blow away a lot of the capabilities that it would take. It would take me hours to make a poster for something. Whereas our students today, the ones who do use AI, will make a poster for a party, and it's just mind blowing in quality because they use AI. Um, if you paired real AGI with those capabilities, there's absolutely nothing that it couldn't do in our field. It could be completely wiped out if we thought that, like I said, we'll keep doing it because we want to. But as far as solving problems and as far as uh, working with businesses, absolutely, AGI could do everything that we're doing, right? It will have to be paired with a robust hardware capability, but already spot dogs can go out and do LiDAR scanning. Already there are robots that can gather all the information, that can install sensors, that can interact with hardware. And then it's really, if you see AGI coming down the road and you see the rate of production of robots that's happening today, absolutely anything that any human could do can be done by technology, let's say in a 5 to 10 to 15-year window.
What an era. Jason, your LSU bio mentions your passion for authentic storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm curious what makes storytelling authentic as opposed to, say, manufactured.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I think it is directly related to what I was talking about, where a very small number of people have creative agency. If you look at a Marvel movie, it's exciting, it's fun, it's fast. I love Iron Man. But a lot of the Marvel movies, they just feel hollow. And it's because the people who are making decisions um, probably are executive producers and people who don't do any of the actual work. And so there becomes a disconnect between the craft and the art and the people who really what they bring to the table is they think they know what audiences want, but they're focused on what any audience could want. And so for me, authentic storytelling involves a person with an idea who chooses to tell that story using some medium that they believe will reinforce that story. Every art is communicating a message and choosing a medium to augment that message. So if you choose dance or if you choose painting, it's because you think painting brings something to, instead you could have just described a scene, right? And so when the creator who has the message is really tied into the medium and is a master of the medium that they choose to use, then you're going to see a richness to the storytelling. You're going to see that the strengths, but also the limitations of that medium are contributing to the experience of receiving that message. And that's authentic to me.
Beautifully said.
Mhm.
You're at the intersection of the arts, technology, science, I think you could very fairly say. What traits should a young person today strive for if he or she wanted to do the same?
Flexibility, curiosity in everything, an incredible hunger and curiosity to know as much as possible, and not a memorization of facts, but breadth. Depth in the things that you're passionate about and interested in, but an incredible ability to skate across the surface and see similarities and go on to what's next. I think every piece of software is updated weekly, if not daily. Hardware is changing so dramatically. Um, the ability to remain flexible, and honestly, I think my biggest strength has been reading and listening comprehension. because I read so much as a kid. I intook so much data. I was so curious that I feel like I can understand conversations, problems very fast. And building those skills from curiosity and flexibility and comprehension will empower our students. Even if everything that we know and believe to be true today changes, those skills will allow them to adapt to whatever the new circumstances might be.
Okay, Jason, we're about to put the car in park. We on the Recap Podcast like to close with a bit of fun, randomness, sometimes maybe with a tinge of the philosophical, if you'll oblige
Great.
me. What do you
Great.
predict will be the long-term fate of live theater?
The live theater has been dying for 10,000 years. Let me say that with a straight face.
Sorry, Aeschylus.
Oh, man. They say the live theater has been dying for 10,000 years. And it may be the best example of what we've been talking about, because we keep doing live theater because we choose to do it. There's absolutely no reason. Film can do anything you want to do better, but there's something visceral about being in the room. The light reflected off of a face, the sound of breath, even experiencing it with the audience around you. We keep doing theater, even though the spectacle is better in film. It's more directly interactive in games. We keep doing it because there's a richness of it. There is an authenticity and an intimacy that we love, that when it's good, it's incredible.
Yes.
And people know this. You can't get a Taylor Swift concert ticket or a Beyonce concert ticket because people love live entertainment. And so if the live theater, which I have done a lot of and that I love, if the industry itself can sort of free itself from sort of the place it's gotten itself into, where the first thing that they think of when they want to do a play is which script from, the 19th or 20th century should we do, and instead create new authentic experiences that use the strengths of their medium, the intimacy of the room, to give people something that they really want. I think it could go on forever, but there are those challenges within it. And so I think we'll keep doing it because we want to do it. But I think if it's going to be great, that it should focus on its own strengths, which largely are not technological. They're human.
Do you think it'd be naive to suspect that, we mentioned vinyl earlier, that there could even be, even if brief, a growth spurt as things become more digitized? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Realm of
As a
possibility?
reaction.
Yep.
Yeah. So even over the last 20 years, we have seen this generation of young people buy in to experiences, right? At the cost of investing in a lot of, like, the luxury industry took a huge downturn, jewelry, huge downturn. Why would I spend a lot of money? I would rather go to Machu Picchu. And even if that does mean that my goal is to take a selfie, it's still an experience-driven activity, right? So I do think that there's something alluring about experiences above and as a reaction to technology and oversaturation with technology. Absolutely. I really think that live experiences that focus on the authentic are being successful. There's a new trend. It's not new now, but a trend in immersive theater where somewhere between a haunted house and a dance performance, but there's alcohol and there's food, theatrical experiences that you don't have to stay in your seat, where you can take a picture, where you can have food and a drink. They're very successful, and where the script is not something that you've ever heard of before, or maybe there's not a script at all. There's a lot of these things happening on a large scale and a small scale. If you look at companies like Punch Drunk doing immersive theater in London and New York, if you look at the Moment Factory or Meow Wolf basically they're like haunted houses that aren't scary. They're more like LSD trip, experiential fun houses. People love it. They're hugely successful. They're in dozens of cities across the US probably. So yes, the experiential is incredibly powerful. And I always loved that, building worlds that you can really explore. is incredible. There's something tangible and literally tangible. There's something rich about the real world that you can't beat. Let's use technology to make that richer, to make authentic things, and let's make the theater good again.
Salu, what is the most overrated movie?
Wow, you're gonna get me in trouble. Casablanca.
We can. Solid. Solid. Incendiary answer, Jason. Wow.
Sorry, everybody.
Love okay. Love the candor. Best designed video game for its time.
Wow. Warcraft 2. That's a throwback.
What was the last thing related to your work that you changed your mind about?
That's a great question. We struggle a lot with building flexibility, building a hub where everyone is welcome, anything is possible. And we, from time to time, are achieving successes. And we are constantly thinking about, do we need more structure? Do we need more systems? Do we need more forms? Do we need more rules? Do we need more autonomy? Do we need to build a building? And the balance between new structures and embracing the chaos is something that I change my mind about every day. We keep moving forward, finding the balance between those two things. And we have new hires. We're adding a project manager. And at the same time, we take on, a new dance performance that's going to involve a ton of allocation of resources and scheduling that I can't even envision. So we try to embrace the chaos while improving the structure as we go forward down the road. But time just goes faster every day. So I'm changing my mind all the time.
What could you deliver a 5-minute TED Talk on that has nothing to do with today's topics?
When I was in high school, I was the president of the FFA, and I was in a competitive speech competition. I was in a speech competition, and my talk was on prescribed burning, talking about how important it is that you don't allow dead matter to build up in a forest, but that you clear it out with occasional burning intentionally so that you have a clean, healthy forest environment.
Stellar. Is jambalaya under, over, or properly rated?
You're gonna get me like actively assaulted if I say anything other than underrated. Only worse than gumbo. Yeah, that's them's fighting words down here in the bayou.
Joyous.
But you got to come down here and come out to a crawfish boil.
Oi, how tantalizing. Yes, sir. Percentage chance we are living and enjoying this conversation in a simulation.
They say it's a pretty high chance. If you think about the likelihood that let's say we're real, but we are creating simulations. We're not creating just one. So any real universe or any real reality would create multiple simulations, most likely. That just functionally makes it more likely that we are one of those simulations.
Last real question, Jason. Around innovation, what are you most excited about for 2026?
We have some very excited grant opportunities that we have put out proposals for that I think we're going to do them anyway, if we get it or not. But we have two big sectors where we're opening up our capabilities. I've talked about them already, but one of them is coastal resilience. We're working with researchers who have used AI so they can predict storm surge and flooding and hurricane damage. And this year, this is absolutely real. They increased the speed at which they can predict hurricane damage and flooding by 100,000 times using AI. What that means is that when we see a hurricane coming up through the Gulf, and this is very important to people in the Gulf Coast, we're going to be able to predict very accurately how bad it's going to be and where it's going to hit. It's incredible. And by working with them to visualize some of these things, we're able to make a much stronger argument to decision makers and to funding agencies that we should be putting more and more resources into this so that we can build it even better. But the other sector I'm even more excited about, and it's digital humans. We're working with over 600 LSU athletes, and they take data, snapshots of 5 or 6 or 7 different kinds of data all the time of these athletes, before games, before performances, before rehearsals, before practices. MRI data, of course, like Apple Watch data, like blood pressure, all that kind of stuff, but also flexibility data, X-rays, everything that you can imagine. Even there's like complex data sets that involve multiple scanning devices that we're not even that familiar with. We're learning how to take some of these proprietary, some of them open source, how to tie these data sets together, how to interpret them, and build a central platform, just like we did with a digital twin of a factory, so that all this data can be looked at together, overlaid over a realistic person using Unreal Engine's metahumans, so that you can literally peel back the skin and look at the ligaments, or you can open up the head and see the MRI point cloud, and you can pull up any of this data in the same window at a whim. So once we have tied all these data together, we're going to train an AI on it so that it can correlate those data points that are too disparate for us to even guess at, and we can have real insights into whether somebody's ready to go back into a game after an injury, or whether they're should take another week out, or all kinds of different things that we can correlate, and we can begin to see how injuries happen and why.
It's astounding. You're accomplishing something when people half a century ago would label it magic. So well done. Jason Jamerson, your breadth of work would make Da Vinci envious. Where can people keep tabs on your work, sir?
That's a real honor. Thanks a lot. Please check me out at jasonjamerson.com, and you can see the XR Studio at xr.lsu.edu.
Jason, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the Recap Podcast.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you for tuning in, Recappers, and for those likes and subscribes that make any stocking stuffer look like coal clumps, because they allow all of us to keep learning from virtuosos like Jason. Happy holidays.